Discover how a lonely CEO and a shivering nurse created an incredible home for a daughter in need. James stood in his sleek penthouse, eyes glued to the Golden Gate Bridge illuminated by the stormy night outside. He was the CEO of a tech startup, yet beneath the surface of his corporate ambition lay an unshakable loneliness. Meetings filled his calendar, and board presentations consumed his time. The clatter of keyboards and the chatter of colleagues left little room for friendship or family, and he often felt more like a cog in the corporate machine than a leader. He hesitated, staring at the latest gadgets cluttering his modern space, wondering what achievement could possibly bring fulfillment. The ringing of his phone pulled him back to the present. It was a business opportunity, yet it felt hollow. What good was success if there was no one to share it with? Across town, Sarah leaned against the cold hospital wall, hoping for a moment's reprieve from her long shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed, and exhaustion seeped into her bones as she cared for the city's most vulnerable. She felt the weight of every patient's struggle, compounded by her own financial burdens. Each bill was a reminder of her meager paycheck. As a nurse, she fought for her patients but felt like she was losing her own family. If only life could be different. She looked up as a gust of wind blew through the hospital's entrance, pulling her outside, where she wrapped her arms around herself in the damp chill. Their worlds collided unexpectedly when the hospital's social worker sought out James in the lobby. As he stood there, lonely despite the crowd, Sarah's eyes caught his. Mia, the critically ill girl they both had never met, needed a foster home. It was a chance encounter, but an undeniable pull connected them. James, burdened by the responsibilities of his tech empire, felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel, a sense of purpose. Sarah, bringing warmth and compassion to Mia's little triangle of safety, brought James closer to the person he could become. Together they embarked on an unexpected partnership, creating something meaningful amid their busy lives. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but as late-night brainstorming sessions settled into a routine, the pressures of ambition began to rear their ugly heads. James felt the prickling tension of corporate pressures gnawing at him. Recognition loomed like a tantalizing prize, yet he found himself questioning his motives. A lucrative marketing opportunity arose, one that could launch his company to the next level, with a narrative that centered on Mia's journey. How could he consider exploiting that for personal gain? The thought clawed at him, and guilt began to haze his mind. Could he prioritize their makeshift family over the accolades he had chased for so long? The balance between obligation and desire became a desperate tightrope walk. Would he risk everything he was building with Sarah and Mia for the glimmering prospect of success? This was a moral crossroads, one that tightened his chest and made breathing irregular. The doorbell rang, shattering the fragile peace they had crafted, and a knot of dread formed in his stomach. He knew whatever lay beyond that door could disrupt everything, and he felt an overwhelming urgency to protect what he had come to cherish. The fear of losing it all loomed over him. What did it truly mean to be a family? James stood frozen for a moment, hand hovering over the doorknob. The doorbell's chime echoed through the spacious penthouse, louder than the storm outside. The warmth he had begun to feel around Sarah and Mia felt suddenly fragile, as if it could shatter with a single misstep. He breathed deeply, trying to calm the rising panic. Was the world of high-stakes deals pulling him away from something more significant? With a steadying exhale, he opened the door. It was the social worker, Rachel, a familiar figure in his recent life. Her expression was a mixture of concern and urgency. "James, we need to talk." Her words struck like a gale-force wind, carrying back the memories of the desperation he felt while navigating his corporate empire. "Couldn't this wait?" he asked, noting the tremor in his own voice. He glanced back, desperate to shield Sarah and Mia from whatever weight was about to be shared. "Not really," she replied, her tone more professional than compassionate. "We have a problem with Mia's case that could affect her future." James felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. His responsibilities as a CEO had always been daunting, but this felt different. This was personal. "What about Mia?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended. He was suddenly aware of how much he had invested in their makeshift family. Rachel stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind her. The foster family that was prepared to take her, they backed out. "They're overwhelmed, and I'm afraid Mia could be moved again." As her words sunk in, a knot tightened in James's stomach. His mind raced with thoughts of Mia's fragile little body, the laugh that had punctured his loneliness when they first met, and the bond blossoming between him, Sarah, and the little girl. Here was a child who needed stability, and he was now a potential savior, yet the weight of that endeavor was daunting. "She can stay here," he stated emphatically, surprising even himself with the resolve in his voice. "We have enough space." "Sarah, she's incredible with her." Each word resonated, a promise he didn't fully understand but sensed he needed to keep. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "James, is that wise? You know the commitment involved. You're working long hours, and another person." "I've been living in a corporate fog," he interrupted. "This isn't just about business. Mia deserves better than to be tossed around. I'll figure it out." The determination in his words surprised him, anchored in a depth of feeling he could no longer ignore. In that moment, as he made the decision to embrace an alternative to his sterile, monumentally successful corporate life, he realized what he truly wanted was for Mia to feel secure and loved. Yet the duality of his ambition, a desire that had once defined him, now stood juxtaposed against a new mission. Before Rachel could reply, the unmistakable sound of tiny footsteps echoed from the hallway. Sarah emerged, her face worn yet radiating warmth. She looked between them, sensing the shift in atmosphere. James knew she would want to be involved. This was part of their joint commitment. "Mia will need us both," he said, looking from Sarah back to Rachel, whose expression softened. "Yes, she will," Rachel spoke, her demeanor shifting as if she was finally seeing the possibility instead of obstacles. As both women exchanged glances, James recognized the growing complexity within him. The path ahead was laden with uncertainties, yet for the first time in a long time, the fear of failing ignited within him just as much as the resolve to succeed. He was willing to face the consequences of this decision because it felt right. But as the gravity of his commitment weighed down on him, he couldn't ignore the shadow lingering outside the door. The pressures of his company awaited him, looming larger than ever, challenging his newfound focus on family. The balance of his ambitions and responsibilities was precarious, a frail line that could snap at any moment. What would this mean for the future? How could he navigate a life merging a demanding career and the nurturing one he'd begun to develop? The answers seemed more elusive than ever. The moment of doubt struck him deeply, taunting him with the prospect of failure. But that was a challenge he hadn't faced head-on yet. And deep down, something in him stirred. If he was to redefine his life, perhaps the real journey was just beginning. Then, a notification buzzed on his phone, an email headline flashing alarming news from his business world. The stakes had just escalated. How would he reconcile these worlds now colliding with such fervor? James felt an electrifying jolt as his phone's screen illuminated the dim light of the penthouse. The email subject line promised chaos, board meeting update, crisis management required. A strong sense of foreboding washed over him. It was as if the corporate world he'd sought to dominate was suddenly clawing back to claim him. He stole a glance at Sarah and Rachel, their faces painted with curiosity yet shadowed with the impending challenge. James knew he had to tackle both the heart of a child in need and the storm brewing at work, yet disappointment loomed heavy in his chest, a reminder that even in moments of personal triumph, professional obligation threatened to ensnare him. "Do you mind if I check this?" he asked, his voice barely audible, as he gestured toward the phone despite knowing the stakes involved. The gravity of his decision was etched in the wrinkles on Sarah's forehead. He felt the weight of her gaze, searching for affirmation that he wouldn't abandon their newfound family. "Go ahead," she said, the vulnerability in her voice unbearably tangible, as if she understood that this moment was pivotal not only for Mia, but for them all. James tapped the screen, eyes wide. A critical deadline was looming, and they needed to make an urgent decision involving a high-stakes merger that could either uplift or devastate his firm. He was torn. This wasn't merely a matter of profit but a potential shift that could impact hundreds of lives, the same energy coursing through his veins as he sought to protect Mia. "What's that?" Rachel asked, her professional intrigue piquing. It's just a board update, James muttered dismissively, yet he felt himself spiraling. He wondered how long he could hide the truth from the two women who had become his emotional bedrock. Would they still view this new venture as a win if failure loomed larger than their serenity? As if reading his mind, Sarah stepped closer, her presence grounding him. Whatever's happening at work, we can handle it. We'll figure this out together, just like we are with Mia. The words were a balm to his uncertainties, yet they also summoned an uncomfortable truth. His career had consumed his life for so long that navigating a path towards family felt utterly foreign. He had built empires, but constructing a home was a different skill set. How could he transfer the aggressive strategy and calculated outcomes of Wall Street into the gentle nurturing required for Mia's development? James, what's wrong? Rachel pressed, noting his internal battle. The urgency in her voice indicated that she knew the stakes were higher than what he silently grappled with. I have a choice to make, he said finally, the weight of those words colliding with the world outside. Both options feel equally terrifying. Then it's time to redefine risk, Sarah spoke, and her certainty struck him. The juxtaposition between his corporate world and the home they were beginning to build could collapse if he didn't strike a balance. But was it even possible to achieve that? I'll need to create a new structure for my life, he admitted, a revelation dawning over him. One that doesn't compromise my responsibilities at home, but still allows me to navigate this chaos. Involve us, James, Sarah encouraged softly, taking his hand in hers. We can be a team. Mia needs it, but so do you. The sentiment cut through him as a flicker of determination ignited his resolve. For the first time, the specter of his dual responsibilities didn't feel overwhelming, it felt like a challenge that could inspire growth. James nodded. Let us meet after this with Rachel, dig into what that means, and set a plan. Now more than ever, we have to make decisions that matter. As they shifted their focus, the blurred lines of his ambitions began to clarify. The struggles he faced in the boardroom were akin to the new responsibilities he was embracing. Both worlds, separate but connected, would require intention, patience, and resilience. The moment felt charged, a collision of possibilities sparking within him. But as they began brainstorming ways to manage the precarious balance of family and career, a chilling notification chimed from his phone, again a video call request from his CEO rival, an affront threatening not only his company but the newfound commitment to MIA. It was time to confront what he had long evaded. Would he stand strong against an adversary, or would it fracture everything he was beginning to build with Sarah and Mia? The stakes had escalated dramatically, and the next move was critical. Would he be ready to face a rival who preyed on his vulnerabilities? James's breath caught in his throat as he faced the call from his rival, a remnant of corporate warfare he had spent years perfecting. He had always relished the thrill of confrontation, the quicksilver exchange of tactics and strategies playing out like a high-stakes game. But now, facing the screen, he felt the weight of his choices pressing against him. Every second ticked away, and every moment felt charged with consequences that rippled beyond the executive floor. Just breathe, he muttered to himself, barely audible over the frantic beat of his heart. Sarah's hand was still clasped in his, unyielding and steady. Her support wrapped around him like a protective shield. Perhaps he needed that grit more than the rigid postures of the boardroom. He took a moment, letting his gaze drift from the lifeless, brightly lit pixels of the screen to the gentle warmth radiating from Sarah and Rachel. The contrast between the cold calculations of business and the palpable warmth of their presence made his choice sharper, more pressing. How could he prioritize a cutthroat rivalry over the fragile peace he was crafting with Mia? But the call was not just a liability, it was an opportunity to assert himself in both worlds. This could define both my career and our future, he spoke, half to himself, half to the women beside him. Strategic decisions will have long-term implications, regardless of which path I take. Then make a decision that aligns with who you want to be, Rachel chimed in, her mind whirring like a finely tuned engine, analyzing the situation with acute precision. Are you a ruthless CEO who pushes aside personal commitments? Or are you willing to reframe the way you approach leadership? James's jaw clenched. Rachel's straightforwardness pierced through his muddled thoughts like a beacon. He had navigated ruthless waters before, but the stakes felt different now. It wasn't merely about victory but about creating lasting relationships, and that began with vulnerability. With a deep breath, he raised the phone to his ear, locking those thoughts in place. "I can't choose between being a father and a leader," he declared decisively. "I will be both, on my terms." As the video call connected and his rival's face came into view, James prepared himself. Yet, instead of the usual surge of adrenaline coursing through him, he felt an unexpected calm settle in his chest. He was not just to engage in a struggle for power, but he carried the weight of commitments that reached far beyond the walls of glass and steel. James, his rival smirked, the facade of confidence plastered across his face. "I trust you're ready to back down. You know this merger isn't in your favor." "Let us be clear," James said, meeting the smug gaze with unyielding resolve. "This merger is about more than profits for me. It's about the people involved, and whether I am in this game for power or for purpose." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and James felt a surge of strength. He wasn't just a boss anymore, he was a mentor, a guide, and a father in the making. The shifting environment around him, every tension-filled pixel of the call reflected his underlying truth, the importance of integration between his personal and professional lives. Confronting his rival head-on felt exhilarating, yet a twinge of doubt gnawed at him. Had he crossed a line he could never come back from? His heart raced as he navigated the intricacies of this newfound ambition, both invigorating and daunting. As the verbal sparring commenced, James felt the dichotomy of his existence amplifying, each counterpoint revealing more about himself than he anticipated. Each word exchanged was a step further into uncharted territory where ambition met personal loyalty, where the professional landscape mapped onto family ties. The call progressed, tension thickening with every note of sarcasm and challenge. And yet, as they faced off, there was a clear realization dancing just beneath the surface: the path towards creating a legacy would require engagement and vulnerability, not just strategy. Determined, he began to craft his next move, calculating not just for the company, but for Mia, Sarah, and everything that mattered in the blossoming foundation of their lives together. But just as he found his cognitive stride, a last-ditch maneuver from his rival rattled him. "You think you can balance that fragile little family with the cutthroat world around us? Watch closely, James. The walls are closing in." The word struck hard, echoing like a warning bell within him. James understood the threat, but at that moment, he realized something crucial: this wasn't only about surviving the storm, it was about transforming into something more. As he prepared to respond, James felt the weight of that confrontation shift. In that moment, he would either reclaim his power or allow himself to unravel. The space between these two realities was growing dangerously thin. Would he understand the depths of his own resolve before it was too late? The tension hung in the air, palpable and electric. James's mind raced, analyzing the veiled threat his rival had just issued. The stakes of the merger had become a battlefield, not just a transaction. It was a test of will, ethics, and the very essence of who he was becoming as a leader and as a father. His heart thudded as he considered this new dimension that extended beyond profits, the impact on Mia's future, the responsibilities he had embraced as a mentor to Sarah and Rachel, and the fragile peace he was cultivating at home. "Your attempts to instill fear won't work," James asserted, his voice steadier than he felt. "I won't back down, nor will I let threats dictate my choices." For the first time in years, he was purely himself, not the polished CEO with perfect rhetoric, but a man caught in the flames of transformation, learning to navigate the complexities of leadership with integrity. If he faltered now, it would not only reflect on him professionally but would resonate into his personal life, potentially threatening the bond he had started to forge as a father. As his rival shifted tactics, James could sense the man's frustration bubbling beneath the surface, a nudge prompting him to press harder. "You think your ideals will get you anywhere in this ruthless industry? You'll lose everything if you don't play the game." A flash of anger ignited within him. It was true, the game was cutthroat. James had mastered it once, but it hadn't filled the void he had felt for so long. His resolve crystallized as he realized the irony: his rival's words only made him more resolute to steer clear of the darkness that blanketed their world. "Honestly? I'm not playing the game anymore, Mark," he said, releasing a breath as he began dismantling the very fortress his rival had built around his threats. "I'm building a foundation. For my future, for my family and my company. You can have your ruthlessness, but I choose to elevate those around me." With renewed determination, James listened closely as Mark's retorts became increasingly desperate. The connection began to feel uneven, his adversary's arrogance revealing insecurities that could turn to vulnerability. James recognized the opportunity within, a chance to pivot the conversation towards common ground, the importance of the people involved in the merger. Look, if we can collaborate, this merger can be transformational for both our companies, which, coincidentally, could benefit us as fathers too. We need to consider essential stakeholders beyond the spreadsheet. The words poured out, testing his own conviction and transforming into an unexpected negotiation of values. It was as if he had unlocked a new level of the game, where cunning wasn't the only currency. Integrity was now on his side. Stakeholders don't care about your wishful thinking, Mark retorted, but the edge in his tone faltered for just a second for James. That moment felt like an opening. He leaned in, investing not just emotion but truth, concocting a strategy that felt more organic than he had ever executed in the corporate arena. Maybe, but this is about more than just the numbers. My goal is holistic growth while keeping integrity intact. You've cited fear, but what about trust? Is that not a more sustainable asset? The call stretched as silence settled, unraveling the previous tension into a fraught calm. In that opening, James felt a twinge of relief, realizing that this transactional nature of his old self was dissipating. A new persona emerged, one rooted in values he wanted to embody: empathy, understanding, and above all, the courage to stand his ground even when the battle loomed larger than he anticipated. The call ended abruptly, leaving James in a stunned silence, yet a whisper of triumph thrummed within him. He had taken a stand, pushing for a principle that mattered in a world that often refuted it. As life rushed back toward him, the warmth from Sarah's hand squeezed reassurance back into him. But in his triumph, an unsettling notion surfaced, one that had been brewing beneath the surface throughout the confrontation. What if Mark was right? What if balancing this newfound purpose with the corporate battlefield was a precarious path that would lead to unraveling the very bonds he held dear? A deep-seated anxiety gnawed at him. The threats weren't just about the merger, they extended into his newfound identity as a father and leader. James realized that the real challenge was just beginning, to navigate this delicate dance of ambition and family, holding onto his emerging vision while facing the existential risks surrounding him. The time had come to face his inner turmoil head-on, yet deeper shadows loomed just beyond the horizon. Would he be strong enough to protect what truly mattered? As reality encroached, he wondered when the next bombshell would drop, and how it would test everything he was learning to stand for. The morning light streamed into James's office, illuminating the remnants of last night's confrontation. The immaculate desk, with its precise arrangements of documents and stationery, stood as a testament to the superficial order that belied his internal chaos. He rubbed a hand over his tired face, feeling the weight of both the merger and his newly sharpened resolve pressing down on him, almost suffocating. How could he balance the demands of his role while solidifying the connections he yearned to build at home? Mia's future hung on the precipice of these decisions, and the stakes had shifted profoundly. He wasn't just fighting for a lucrative deal, he was grappling with what kind of man he wanted to be for her and for himself. The morning passed in a blur as James toggled between meetings, his mind lingering on the possibilities that stretched out before him. As he approached the conference room for yet another merger strategy session, a thought struck him: this was his opportunity to redefine power dynamics. He could harness his experience not as a weapon, but as a tool for unity. He took a deep breath before stepping into the room, letting the sweat of anxiety transform into focus. "All right, team," he greeted, his voice steady now. "Today, we're not just outlining our agenda. I want us to consider how this merger can truly benefit the people involved. Our teams, our families, and even the communities we serve. I know what it's like to think only about the bottom line, but the best results come when everyone is invested in the outcome." Murmurs of confusion ricocheted around the table, faces reflecting skepticism. James anticipated the pushback but remained undeterred. "I realize that this isn't traditional, but I believe it's essential. Our people are our greatest asset, and caring for them should be our foremost strategy." With each word, he felt a strange empowerment coursing through him, the kind that comes when one stakes a claim in the face of doubt. The discussion morphed slowly but surely. Colleagues who once held cynical expressions began to share stories about unmet needs, employees struggling to balance work and life, and ramifications of a culture that prioritized profit over people. It struck James then that he was not alone in his evolving values. They were as hungry for warmth in the corporate environment as he was. By the meeting's end, a tentative agreement formed around establishing mentorship programs, improved parental leave options, and regular feedback loops that would foster open dialogue among staff. Each proposal felt like a personal triumph. For the first time, the merger represented not just a financial win but a chance to reshape corporate culture. As he returned to his office, James gazed out at the bustling city skyline, his heart brimming with hope. He could feel the burgeoning sense of momentum. Yet, that wet blanket of dread still clung to him. What would Mark's next move be? Would he resort to more aggressive tactics? His phone buzzed, cutting through his contemplation. A text from Sarah appeared. "Are we still on for dinner tonight? Can't wait to see you." In that moment, a surge of warmth enveloped him, reminding him of what was truly important. Yet, the ambitious nights ahead loomed uncertainly. Would he be able to uphold the newfound ideals he'd set forth while navigating the turbulent waters of corporate warfare? James squared his shoulders, resolving to confront whatever challenges lay ahead with the same fortitude he showed during the meeting. The showdown wasn't just with Mark, but against the very tendencies that had driven him in the past. He needed to rise above, not just for himself, but for Mia and Sarah. Just as he started to formulate a plan for the evening, another message chimed in, this one more distressing. "We need to talk about Mia. It's urgent." A chill raced down his spine as the words echoed ominously. It clicked, the moment of truth was upon him, and it could alter everything. James's heart raced as he read the message again. The urgency of the words sent a visceral wave of anxiety crashing over him. He couldn't afford to be blindsided, not now. Not when he was finally trying to steer his life towards the values he held dear. He tapped his fingers on the desk, wrestling with the decision of how to respond. His feelings for Mia and Sarah intertwined, complicating every thought. Would it be selfish to prioritize the merger over family? He envisioned Mia's small face, innocent yet embedded with the complexities of idealism and childhood. He had wanted to forge a better future not just for her but for himself, to build a legacy of compassion in a world dictated by numbers. The hum of office chatter began to fade into a distant murmur, leaving only the pulsating rhythm of his heartbeat. In one swift motion, he grabbed his phone and texted a quick acknowledgement, letting them know he needed a moment to prepare. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing against him, the familiar tug-of-war between duty and desire echoing within. Before he lost himself in spiraling thoughts, James decided that dinner with Sarah could not be missed. She represented the softer side of his newfound resolve, a reminder of compassion amidst corporate warfare. He wanted to share this vulnerability with someone, to enable them to see the two sides of his struggle. As he prepared for the evening, he pulled out the neatly pressed shirt that hung in his closet, a reminder of the person he aspired to be. In the mirror, he met his gaze resolutely. How could he persuade Sarah, and even himself, that balancing life and ambition wasn't an enlistment of fantasies? Would speaking openly about his family concerns mark him as weak, or could it demonstrate the strength he had struggled to cultivate? Dinner unfolded in a cozy little restaurant, the dim lighting casting shadows across their plates. Their conversation danced around lighter topics at first, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. "James, you seemed different lately. More engaged. What's on your mind?" Sarah's genuine interest pierced through his hesitance, an invitation to break the surface tension. He paused, gathering courage as if navigating in uncharted waters. "It's about Mia. There's been a shift in priorities for me. This merger, it's not just about business anymore. I need it to be about something bigger. She deserves that." Sarah listened intently, her emerald eyes reflecting warmth. "That's profound. I can see how this is affecting you. Have you considered how your work life can support your family life?" James's mind raced. "I think so. I want to create a culture that puts people first, but how do I maintain my voice in a system so entrenched with profit?" As he spoke, he sensed the gears of his mind clicking together, the epiphany burgeoning like a sunrise. By advocating for his workplace ideals, he could be the catalyst for changes that might ultimately benefit Mia and Sarah, shaping a future where business intertwined with humanity, rather than suffocating it. Their conversation drifted on, but a new plan was forming at the contours of James's thoughts. It was about the merger, about engaging in the heart of corporate culture to advocate for the very people he loved. He could look to reshape the ethos of the workplace, and in doing so, build a better home. As they wrapped up dinner, Sarah leaned across the table. "You're capable of more than you give yourself credit for, James. Just don't lose sight of what really matters." Her words settled over him like a protective blanket, yet anxiety crept back in at the edges. Uncertainty about Mia loomed. Stepping into the unknown, he would have to confront Mark and his own worst tendencies. The first move had to be made. As he left the restaurant, James felt the gravity of his commitments pulling him back towards the office. He couldn't ignore the urgent message waiting for him. He needed to delve into this crisis head-on and navigate the murky waters that threatened his vision for the future. The moment of confrontation was approaching, and he could no longer avoid it. But would he be prepared for whatever truths awaited him? James stepped into his office the next morning, the air thick with tension as impending deadlines loomed overhead. The atmosphere buzzed with whispers of the merger, each corner echoing the disquiet that surrounded him. He could almost touch the weight of unaddressed dilemmas in the air. He reminded himself that he was no longer just a cog in the machine, he was a voice to be reckoned with. As he settled into his chair, he drafted a plan. Advocacy would be his weapon. He needed to inspire those around him by weaving his family values into the fabric of corporate strategy. But first, he would confront Mark, the merger's orchestrator, a man defined by profit margins and spreadsheets, an embodiment of everything James aimed to change. He took a deep breath, summoning the courage to bridge his ambitions. The day ahead was critical. The stakes had never felt higher, and as he approached Mark's door, a bead of sweat trickled down his spine. He couldn't let fear of confrontation deter him from his vision. He knocked firmly, the sound reverberating through his chest, and entered. Mark sat behind a sprawling desk, his fingers tapping lethargically on a tablet. "James," he said, barely looking up. "What's on your mind?" James took a seat. "I want to talk about the merger and the direction we're taking. If we move forward without considering the well-being of our employees and their families, we miss the mark entirely." Mark's brow furrowed, irritation flickering across his features. "This is business, James. We have stakeholders to satisfy and profits to report. Sympathy doesn't pay the bills." James clenched his fists, feeling the anger simmer. "But it should. We can redefine success here. Imagine a workplace where people are valued not just for their productivity but also for their humanity. I want to lead initiatives that prioritize employee well-being. Happy employees will drive innovation and profitability over time." Mark leaned back in his chair, skeptical. "Such ideals will only complicate our focus. You need to understand that not everyone shares your unconventional viewpoint." "That's precisely why I'm here," James replied, firming his resolve. "Leadership starts with embracing new perspectives. If we can create a culture that nurtures compassion and growth, we'll attract talent, reduce turnover, and ultimately drive exceptional outcomes." The room was weighty with silence, Mark weighing the merits of his argument. Though he remained impassive, James could feel the tension gradually shift. His commitment sparked an ember of curiosity in Mark's eyes, a flicker of possibility. "Are you suggesting we pivot away from our current strategy? Are you prepared to defend that to the board?" Mark's tone had softened slightly, intrigued yet skeptical. "Yes. I will present this vision to the board, and I'm ready to get their support," James asserted, his heart pounding but determination swelling. "It's not merely a change in strategy, it's a shift in our ethos. If we start at the core of our values, we can lead the industry in a new direction." Mark studied him, his gaze piercing yet contemplative. "Fine. You will have your opportunity. Expectations will be high." As James left the office, adrenaline pulsed through him, mingling with a vow to follow through. He had taken the first step toward redefining his role not only for himself but for Mia and Sarah. The prospect of the board meeting loomed, and he felt the ground shift beneath his ambitions. Reflecting on the discussion, a thought began to form. If he could get buy-in from the board, he could genuinely influence the outcome not just of the merger, but the culture they established moving forward. When he arrived at his desk, James found himself inundated with corporate reports and emails. Yet, beneath the chaos, he now wore a new layer of purpose and armor woven from his values and ambitions. But just as he began sorting through his tasks, an email dropped into his inbox, its subject line pulling him back from hopeful visions to impending dread: urgent, family matter, contact immediately. His heart dropped. What could it be? The stakes had never felt higher, and now personal matters threatened to overshadow his professional aspirations. He hesitated, staring blankly at the screen. The moment of truth had arrived, not just for his career but for everything he wanted to protect. Would he unfurl his courage one more time? James stared at the email, its subject suffocating any flicker of hope he had entertained moments before. The weight of uncertainty flooded his body, a gnawing anxiety coiling deep in his stomach. He felt as if he were at a crossroads between his professional aspirations and the familial duty that had always tugged at his heartstrings. Swallowing hard, he closed the email without responding. The urge to run away from his responsibilities surged within him, tempting him to bury himself in work. Yet, that wouldn't solve anything. He needed to confront whatever truth awaited him, even if it meant unveiling a painful reality. With a determined resolve, he picked up his phone and dialed the number his mother had been calling from, each ring heightening his anxiety. When her familiar voice finally answered, it cracked with emotion. "James, I'm so glad you picked up," she said, her breath hitching. "It's about your father." The words struck like a heavy blow. His father had been battling health issues for years, but he always managed to shield the family from the worst of it. What happened? James pressed, his chest tightening. He's in the hospital. They think it might be serious this time. I don't know how to manage this without you," she choked out, desperation creeping into her voice like a shadow. An overwhelming wave of helplessness washed over him. James felt inadequate, torn between his obligations at work and the reality of a family crisis. This call was a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities lurking beneath his carefully crafted professional image. How could he position himself as a leader promoting employee well-being when he struggled to support his own family? "I'll be there, Mom." "Just hold on," he replied, choosing decisiveness over despair. As he hung up, clarity slipped through his fingers, replaced by the gnawing realization that his aspirations could be overshadowed by personal turmoil. Gathering himself, he reflected on his upcoming presentation to the board. Aligning his vision with the compassionate culture he sought to foster was more crucial than ever. He tapped his pen against his desk, envisioning the words he would need to wield powerfully, not merely as a corporate strategy, but as personal conviction. That he would weave in the importance of family, emphasizing that each employee brought their own challenges and triumphs to the workplace. This wasn't just about company profits, it was about creating an environment where people could thrive through both personal and professional lenses. But as these thoughts formed into abstract plans, his phone buzzed again. A text from Mia illuminated the screen. "Hey Dad, hope you're okay. Miss you." James's heart ached at the thought of her, innocent and unaware of the turbulence surrounding them. He remembered how she filled their home with laughter. The picture of her in his mind reignited the fire of his aspirations and intensified his commitment to lead with empathy. Integrating his family's values into corporate strategy was not just a professional endeavor. It was personal. He needed to protect Mia's future, to ensure she grew up in an environment that fostered understanding and compassion. Rising from his chair, he paced the office, rehearsing his pitch in urgency. He would articulate a vision where compassion triumphed over cold metrics. His forthcoming battle with the board wouldn't just be about convincing them, it would be about transforming an organization from within. As he finally settled back at his desk, a surge of clarity surged through him. Just as he was preparing to draft a preliminary outline for his presentation, his phone chimed again. Another email notification darkened his screen. "Urgent update, board meeting rescheduled to tomorrow morning." He had precious little time. Knowing that his days of misalignment between personal and professional needed to end, he dug deep to summon his courage, ready to fight for what mattered most, not just for Mia, but for his father, and for all the people who deserved compassion over profit. The stakes had shifted once again. And as James positioned himself to confront the board, he realized a painful truth awaited him. Would he have the strength to embody the change he sought, even as uncertainty surrounded his family? The moment of truth was drawing near. In the stark fluorescent light of the boardroom, James sat before an audience of executives, the weight of expectation pressing down on him. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. The urgency of his family situation had stripped away the superfluous noise that had once clouded his vision. Now, he stood not merely as a CEO, but as an advocate for a philosophy that interwove care and compassion into the fabric of corporate culture. This was the moment where ambition met integrity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, resonating with the confidence he struggled to find in the past. "Today, I'm asking you to envision a new kind of success, one where we prioritize the well-being of our employees as fiercely as we chase profit margins." The murmurs rippled like a wave through the room. Eyes narrowed, skepticism etched into many faces. Yet, he pressed on, unwavering. "I won't shy away from our targets, but I am convinced that achieving them requires us to nurture the relationships within our workforce. Their triumphs, personal burdens, and resilience should drive how we operate. A satisfied, engaged employee propels productivity in ways that dollars simply cannot quantify. This merger can redefine not just our company but the very industry." Silence hung thick in the air, tension palpable. A board member shifted, trying to mask disbelief. Yet another murmured, "We're a business, not a charity." The statement struck a chord, igniting the embers of determination deep within James. "I understand that sentiment," he replied, his tone staying firm yet composed. "But our roles as leaders extend beyond profit and loss. We have an opportunity to foster a culture that values humanity. If we genuinely invest in our people, the returns will follow organically. Our bottom line will reflect our values." As he spoke passionately about mentorship programs, flexible working arrangements, and community engagement, something shifted. Rather than retreating into resistance, they began to lean forward, contemplating the merits behind his assertions. He painted for them a vision where families thrived alongside corporate success, where fulfilling work and holistic well-being walked hand in hand. By the time he reached the end of his presentation, sweat beaded at his brow, but he felt invigorated, a far cry from the isolation of boardrooms past. "Together, we can shift our narrative from one defined by profit alone to one anchored in purpose," he concluded, heart racing with a blend of vulnerability and conviction. A moment stretched, and then the silence broke. A board member spoke, "I see potential in this framework. It's unconventional but groundbreaking." Others nodded hesitantly in agreement. James's heart surged, they were beginning to understand. Ideas began to flow, spurred by his newfound vision, each suggestion weaving another thread into a mosaic of a supportive work environment. As the meeting dissolved into animated dialogue and collaboration, relief flooded James's chest. There was still resistance, but he had planted seeds of change, shifting perceptions and priorities. The merger was no longer a mere transaction, it had transformed into a mission with the potential to influence lives. With the board meeting behind him, James rushed home, where the air was thick with warmth and possibility. Mia bounded toward him, laughter sparkling in her eyes, while Sarah prepared dinner, embodying the heart of the home they were building together. Here was validation of his struggles. The foundation he was forging was beginning to solidify. "I did it," he confessed, his voice raw with emotion, as he shared the day's triumph with them. "I stood for something vital today, for us." Mia wrapped her little arms around him, and for the first time in his life, he felt an unshakable conviction. "Dad, you always do amazing things," she grinned. "You make everything better." In that moment, the convergence of his professional and personal ambitions felt seamless. No longer at odds, both realms complemented one another, illuminating a path that was clear and pure. As days turned to weeks, James saw tangible changes ripple through the company. Initiatives rolled out, fostering connections, leading to heightened morale, and increasing productivity. They were steering the corporate ship toward a horizon filled not with the empty promises of profit margins, but with a genuine commitment to the well-being of their employees. Initiatives that would impact countless families, including his own. Redefining success was no longer an ideal, it had become their reality. James had achieved his greatest aspiration, a workplace infused with dignity, respect, and compassion, and seated around the dinner table, basking in the laughter and stories shared, he no longer felt alone. He had built a life fueled by purpose, with the strongest team by his side. James leaned back and closed his eyes briefly, allowing gratitude to wash over him. This journey had not only transformed his professional trajectory but had shaped the man he had always aspired to be. Ferried by the currents of ambition, love, and family, James stood resolute at the brink of a new beginning, ready to face whatever the future would bear alongside the family he cherished. This was the moment he had always dreamed of, the merging of his vocation with his values, culminating in an extraordinary achievement, a life woven together through connection, courage, and a commitment to make a difference. Now, we reach you with urgency. You need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support, as you want to miss the next exclusive emotional stories of personal triumph and transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Each like helps our reach grow, so leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It's time to comment your reactions and theories about this ending and participate in this journey of growth.